Welcome back to Magic. You might say, oh, I thought this was Mary Craft's podcast on crafting a meaningful life. Normally it is, but today we're going to talk about magic. We're going to talk about magic, the magic that happens in our lives when we get to create and discover and live our authentic self. I want you to welcome with me my dear friend, Shantel Reitz. Welcome, Shantel.
Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Are you ready to create some magic today?
Absolutely.
I know
Always.
I know that about you. You're always ready, girl. I follow you on social media for so many reasons. I follow some people because they're just funny. They make me laugh. They put a smile on my face every day. They post weird things about their children and their dogs and all sorts of crazy things. I follow some people because they're just my friends and I want to know what's going on in their lives. And then I follow some people because every day watching them walk through the process of life and learn from every day, they lift me as well. And girlfriend, that's one of the main reasons why I follow you on social media because I just love watching you live your authentic life.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I try.
Well, I don't think you just try. I think you succeed. If you're watching just on audio, you're missing Chantel's hair. Now, if you're watching on YouTube, look at that girl. She has this fluorescent, I don't know, I love that color blue. It's kind of, what color is
Thank
that?
you.
Is it cobalt blue? Kind of
It's kind of like a teal, but it's pretty bright. It varies, depends on how long ago I've had it done and
So
all of
I
that.
did this color one time. I
Did
actually
you?
did. I did. And it stayed about 2 weeks and then it went to green and then it went to gold and then it went to kind of this mousy color. And I said, oh, that takes way too much upkeep for me. And in honor of your blue hair, I decided to do my purple one today. So there we go. We both can walk to our own because we are. That hair stuff that we wear is one of the first things that people see about us. Right off the bat, they see that, they say, "Wow, okay, she's different." And we used to think that different was wrong.
Yeah.
When I was growing up, people that were like you and me, not me. Back then I tried to color in the lines and just stay there always. But we said, "Oh, that person walks to the beat of a different drum." And that was a nice way of saying both that they're weird. But now weird is wonderful because we recognize weird as authenticity. We don't have to be a cookie cutter and a rubber stamp of every person.
Yeah,
So,
I
talk to
agree.
me about that process of finding your authentic self, kind of where you walked through that and how you began to claim it. Because I have found that most people, not all, but most people who have finally come to genuinely living who they truly are, found that person. They didn't just
Yeah.
automatically know that person. So, tell me
Yeah,
how
I
that
think we
process
go
worked for you.
through I think we go through a process of, when we're kids, it's almost like we're water. We're beautiful, flowing. We don't have a care in the world about what other people think of us. And as we start to have experiences in life, we start to get this idea, whether it's put upon us externally or we'd make those assumptions ourselves based on what we see and interact, but that need for belonging, we start to think
Yeah.
that we need to be, do, act a certain way. So it's like we pour ourselves into this ice cube tray and freeze up to try to hold this form of what we think we're supposed to be. And then the longer that you're around and you start to then realize, like, why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? And you start to allow yourself to go back to that free flowing water. And really, there's so much less effort there. That's what I say. Like, we spend so much of our time and energy trying to be this thing that we're not, that we could really, when we let that go, we can start applying that in other areas of our lives to really help us move forward and succeed.
I love that analogy that we see what all the other cubes in the tray look like. So we pour ourselves in there and then freeze it so that we can be in line. You just described my entire childhood. And actually, probably my life, really through my 40s, I think. that
Yeah.
I saw what everyone else, and I had to work so hard every day to try and stay in line with what the rest of them were doing.
Yeah, and it's so much effort. It takes so much energy to try to maintain that when it's out of alignment for us. And really just letting that go. And the more that we learn to let that go, and it's a process, right? Like I always say that we've got to just look at things with that like childlike curiosity. Like, what if I did like this? What if I was able to do this? And just really start to figure those things out a little bit at a time. It's not like we just all of a sudden one day we're like, I'm just going to have a blue mohawk and I'm just going to shave my head and, like, or whatever it is. Like, it takes time and process, and we have to test the waters and dip that toe out when we feel
Mm.
safe in our own skin. Then we can expand that out and take the toe a little further. So it's definitely a process. It's not something that just one day you wake up and you just are a whole different person. It's trial and error in figuring out what we do like. Some of the things we've buried that we don't even recognize anymore because we've tried to protect them, that we don't even recognize it anymore. So we have to just have grace for ourselves and, just try things out.
So I think that's one of my first questions. Uh, People might be asking themselves, because the majority, not all, but the majority of my listeners are women, and how they might ask themselves, well, how do I know if I'm living my true self? How do I know if I'm pretending or make believing or hiding? I don't know. I'm just who I am. I'm just me. How do I know? How do people discover that piece?
I think a lot of it is starting to tune in with the signals and emotions that our body sends us. If we're living in a state of constant anxiety, frustration, things that where we just are
Ah,
not jiving, there's not flow there, then that's a good indication that you're forcing things one way or another. My big thing was control, especially with like my background. I grew up having some sexual abuse as a kid, and
oh,
so for me, I really wanted to control what was going on and control outcomes and good and bad. I just needed to have that piece of control. And so to be able
mm,
to look at that and to recognize that I was trying to force things to happen instead of allowing and the flow to happen was a big indication for me.
hmm. Wow, I didn't know that piece was part of your history and part of your life.
Yeah.
Um, and that is definitely usually comes out in one of two ways. Either you're the super controller or you're the total victim, and one or the other. Um, and by being the super controller, you at least become functional in life. And so
Yep.
sometimes it's even harder to see it. Whereas if you're just the constant victim, those people struggle to even be functional. And it's a little
Yeah.
easier to see that. Um, I don't think I had sexual abuse in my life, but I definitely was all about control and felt I was completely out of control in my life unless I just froze it right there. I just
Yeah.
hold it and constantly looking around to see if I was in alignment with what everyone else was. I think that's one of the biggest problems with social media is it just allows us to do this super comparison. We used to do comparison, but like in regular sight. Now we do comparison like it's
Yeah.
just like under a microscope. Like, oh my gosh, look how she's wearing her hair. That's how I have to wear my hair. Oh, I didn't know those shoes were in style now. I have to buy those. I didn't know I should have 2.3 children. I have too many. I mean, just so many things that we bring ourselves into alignment. So, what do you see kind of as those first steps to take off the masks that we've put on? And usually there's more than one.
I really feel like if we start to look at the things that we loved as children that maybe we don't do anymore,
Ah,
play, I think, is the biggest healer on the planet. Just allowing ourselves to go back to being a kid, go back to having fun. There's no rule except for the ones that we put in our heads that say that being an adult means you can't have fun. And so just starting to try out some of those things and just like releasing expectations of that. Just go out and have fun for no other thing than just to be silly and to just discover things about yourself. And I really feel like that is the way creativity is actually the key to healing past traumas. And it allows us to remap some different pathways
Huh.
that we've had in our brains. When we have a trauma, it actually creates a lesion in the brain, and our brain has to learn to map around it. But through creativity and connection, we can actually repave those pathways. So just allowing yourself time to explore and have fun with zero expectations is a really great way to start getting in tune with who you are.
I love that when you talked about childhood and what were some of the things you loved to do. In my earliest childhood, maybe younger than 5, uh, I don't remember a lot of those things, but I do remember kind of after that from 5 to forever. My favorite thing to do was to play with paper dolls. Now,
Oh, I loved paper
paper
dolls.
dolls are not a thing now, but when I was growing up, paper dolls were a huge thing.
Yeah.
And as I started thinking about that when you were talking, one of the reasons I know I loved playing with paper dolls and dolls in general was that it was make believe.
Yeah.
And I could be that paper doll for just a moment. And I could look the way that paper doll did for just a moment. I could put on a little bit different dresses and clothes and accessories on that little paper doll for just a minute. And it allowed me to leave the person that I didn't like and become a person that I like. Wow, that paper doll, they're so perfect.
Yeah.
And I think even though I didn't know I was still playing paper dolls, I played paper dolls for a long time in my life, just trying to live through other people and trying to be like other people.
Yeah.
You know, you said one thing one time that I think you posted about this, that awakening to that you were not the right kind of person. What do you mean by that?
You know, um, I think that what it was for me was realizing that I was able to love all the sides of me and not just the good ones. That I could love the things that maybe
Mm,
I had perceived as bad, and maybe I had mislabeled some things about myself. And so it's really that allowing of all, like, unconditional love to me means loving without conditions. And we have to think about how many conditions we place on ourselves in order to be deemed as lovable and what that looks like. And when I really thought about it, I'm able to have unconditional love for a lot of people, but was I able to have it for myself? And what did that mean to love without conditions? And so it was really looking at those places and inside of myself that I had thought were dark or bad or wrong or not acceptable. And it was allowing those to actually be part of who I am and bringing that to light. And that's really loving the whole. You know, there is no duality within us. If there's only congruency if we love both sides, and admitting that there are parts of ourselves that we can use everything to good or bad. Doesn't matter what it is, every characteristic trait, every whatever, and it's in how we use it. And so when we remove the labels that we've put on things, we're able to really come to that full
mm.
acceptance of ourselves.
You know, you say this thing that it takes so much energy to hide.
Yeah.
And I think about so many of the years of my adult life where I would just say to myself every morning, even though I could have changed it at any time, there was this exhaustion that I would feel. And I'm like, I would actually say out loud, it's not easy to be Mary Crafts. And the reason is because there was this perfectionism piece that I felt I needed to put out. I had 24 purses each season hanging in my closet right by the garage so I could change purses to exactly match my outfit every single day. I had 100 pair of shoes so I could make sure I had the exact pair of shoes that matched the exact outfit. I carry 30 pairs of sunglasses in my car so that it could be completely coordinated, with whatever. I'm like, damn, this is so hard to be me. And it really wasn't until after I retired. I mean, that was just 4 years ago. I finally said, I don't have to do any of that stuff. I don't have to do any of that stuff. You know what? I'm going to walk out of this house and feel just as good about who I am if my purse is the same person I've had for the last 3 months I've been carrying around. And, just to begin to give away clothes and leave only those things in the closet that felt real to me, that I felt beautiful in. And it was this transition that I made at even this point in my life. Stopped devoting so much energy into being this piece that wasn't really me. And that's what you're talking about here,
Yeah.
is finding that beautiful side inside. How do you know, Chantel, when you found or you see or you understand your true identity?
It's really a becoming and a flow. I think flow is probably the best word
Mm,
to describe it, just because everything is just in place and it just feels good, and things happen for you because you are that light of congruency. Things attract to you and you are being that self. It's the act of being that brings the law of attraction, if you will, into play. Because when we're acting those things and we are those things, that's when we're in that true vibration of when things just happen and flow and come, and it's a beautiful place. So it's really just like, the best way I can describe it is if you've ever had a moment in your life where you just felt like you were in the zone, right? Like maybe you held on to that for a couple of hours, but like you were just nailing it. Whatever happened, you were on it. You just had this that's what it feels like. Everything just
to be in
works
flow.
in that space.
It is kind of a very specific feeling that you're talking about, that being in the flow. And it literally feels like, rather than being an ice cube in a tray, that you are that water that you talked about,
Yeah.
that flow of water, and you can ebb and flow. I love that water ebbs and flows,
Yeah. And there's
and
no
that
effort to it. It
there is
just
no
is.
effort to it.
Yeah.
Do you have any habits or rituals or things that you do, that you check yourself with, that you or use as tools to um, make sure you're there?
Yeah, absolutely. My morning routine is a big one for me. Obviously, like spending that time in meditation. Um,
Yeah.
for me, it's that spiritual journey, but the definition of spirituality for me isn't necessarily traditional. I think a lot of people view it as, chasing, not chasing, but um, trying to bring ourselves closer to God. But for me, it's more of a self discovery time where it's finding the divinity within myself and aligning myself there. And so when I sit in my spiritual practice, it is that alignment for myself of bringing myself into my own divinity. And so that's a lot of what I do in my morning practice, is that time for me to really spend with myself and focused on myself. And then, the biggest thing that I also look for is how I want people to feel when they interact with me, and what that is. That's kind of my checks and balances system, is anytime I go into a situation, is how do I want people to come out feeling after they've had an interaction with me. And there's a lot of things that I will do for myself as far as like affirmations or like mantras, if you will, before I walk into a situation. Doesn't matter who it is. I have one for my kids. I have one for my husband. I have one for, my clients. However, I'm going to show up in that space. And before I enter, I will say it out loud to myself several times so that I show up in that space how I want to show up. And no matter what's going on in my day, I can really reset and set my tone for that next moment. So
Mhm.
that's kind of how I keep myself in check throughout the day, for sure.
You know, the practice of meditation is something I've talked about a lot on the podcast, and having that as part of your life. And sometimes people struggle with, who have not done meditation, struggle just a little bit with knowing even how to begin that process. And how is that different than prayer? And How much of my day do I have to put in this meditation thing? I mean, it sounds like, sounds like a retreat in the mountains for 3 days, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
how would you encourage or instruct people into this walk of discovering meditation?
Yeah, so for me, prayer and meditation work pretty much hand in hand, but to me, it's the opposing energy. So in meditation, that's my time to receive in that flow. Like if we think about a fountain, right? Water comes in, water goes out, and so the meditation part is the reception part, and for me, the prayer part is the external give part. So it completes that circular flow for me. So there
Yeah.
is a difference for me, even though I think they can be very much intertwined. Um, and I think just getting started, it's really just about just finding stillness for yourself and giving yourself a moment to reset. And it doesn't have to look any which way. When I first started meditating, I would even do it when I was driving, and it was more of just being present and aware, like even just driving down the street and noticing the bright color of the blue sky or the vividness of the trees or the sounds that I could hear or what was going on around me, and just slowing down and just being in the moment. And then as you grow and build on that, obviously that can look a little bit different, but there's not a right or wrong with it. And I think we get hung up on all of these things of what it has to look like or what it's supposed to look like.
I have
And
to
it
sit in the
hinders us
yoga
from doing.
pose and I have to listen to this certain
Yeah. And I
music
have to
and
hold this mudra and I
I have
have
to
to
have
do.
my fingers like this hum.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we're hindering ourselves on that. Like we just need to just let that go. It's just really a time to just be present with yourself.
You know, I always think of prayer as the ask. I need this, I need that, I need help with this. Please watch over this person, watch over this. It's the ask.
Yeah.
But if you never take time to stop to listen and to open up and still your mind, how do you know if all those things are being given to you? Or
Yeah.
how do you know if perhaps there's a different direction for you to look if you're not listening? And I love that quiet time. Sometimes for me, it's 60 seconds.
Hmm.
If I have a lot of people around, I can just go in my closet and close the door, sit down on it, and I just 60 seconds of understanding.
Yeah.
This is a confession. Sometimes I've been in a situation where I'm like, I'm not quite sure how to advise a person. And I've actually went into the bathroom and just sat in that stall on the toilet and just quieted my mind and let myself hear and be directed. And those thoughts that are coming to me in those quiet times are the divinity's thoughts.
Yeah.
Show us where to go and
Yep.
how to live, how to be. Things to
Yeah.
say when I think I'm at a loss for words. If I just quiet my mind, the words are there.
Yep. Every time. I love that.
So tell me about your journey to being a beauty queen.
So, so that does go pretty far back. When I was, a teenager, I had done a couple of pageants, but it was for the wrong reasons. I did them back then
Ah,
because I was trying to prove my worth, and I was in a space of, I was coming out of that abuse that I had been hiding, and I just so desperately wanted some sort of external validation to show I was worth more than what I had been enduring and going through. And so I did them, in my teens, and then I did my last one probably 17 or 18, and that was kind of it. Fast forward a long time, a few years ago, back in 2018 or 19, a friend of mine had said, "Hey, you should do this pageant. I think it would be really great." And I was like, "No, that's like so not my thing." And she's, I own a fitness studio and I'm working with women on this stuff all the time. And just, this typical beauty standards and things that are out, that's not my jam,
yeah,
and I'm trying to help women figure out and love themselves, as they are. And she's like, "No, like that's the exact reason you should do it, because you need to spread your message out to more people." And I was like, "Well, I'll think about it," And so I ended up having a conversation with the pageant director, and And I said, okay, if I do this, I'm not changing my hair and I'm not going to go on a crazy diet. You know, like what you see is what you get. And she's
Yeah.
like, nope, that's all we care about. And so I was like, okay. So I made the decision to go and compete, and I went all the way through and won Mrs. Premier World. And my platform was embrace your inner weirdo. And so I just was out there being my weird self in all the spaces, and just having a good time, and it
Mhm.
paid off. So it was a really fun thing, and just completely unexpected, but I just had fun with it. So
I love that, Mrs. Premier World. I mean, seriously, we all have that title. We just don't
yes,
realize it. And that we all have the beauty is in the uniqueness of ourselves. I just think about how many years I spent trying to look like everyone else and failing miserably. I just could not do it. And then the moment I was like, okay, you just got to find yourself. And like you say, I was okay with my weirdness. I don't think
yeah,
people look at Mary Crafts and think she's the most normal person I know.
probably
I
not.
think I do think that they think that I am the maybe one of the most real people that they know,
Yes,
because I'm so willing to just be vulnerable and open it up and put it out there and show all the stuff that I've got. You know what? In fact, but you know, when you feel authentic, you don't, it's not like a permanent thing. There are times you fall back and
absolutely.
you feel an ice cube again. How do you recognize that?
You know, again, it's just how it feels when you're in that space. I think once you've been in alignment and you're congruent, you can very quickly course correct. You can feel yourself pretty quickly when you feel out of alignment. And so I think the more you're in tune with that and the more you're in that space, you can more quickly recognize and bring yourself back in. So mine is just really just relying on how I feel and that the flow and the energy and that it's taking to remain in the space I'm in.
Ah, I had an experience this last week. Actually, it was yeah, it was last week, where I've been learning golf this summer, and I've never done anything so hard. It's just not an easy sport. Can I just say? It's crazy. And I decided I was going to go hit some balls by myself, without John or an instructor or a partner or a friend. And I was just going to go. So I loaded up my things in my car and I went out to the local golf course. And when I got there, I looked over at the driving range and they were all full and they were all men. And I just suddenly just did not feel like my real self. I was like, oh, maybe I'll just go home and come back again later. No, I don't know. And I drove around the parking lot like 3 times around in a circle, just thinking, is there a spot open yet? Or is there a woman over there? Or are they just young kids that don't know how to golf? Or who's over there? And as I'm driving around, I'm thinking, is this who you are? After all this time, you're still driving around in a parking lot out of fear because you didn't fit the mold?
Yeah.
Because you're not going to get out over there and just have everybody ooh and ah that, wow, she's a great golfer. You just were going to be real in your own skill level. I know how to deal with this. I parked the car. I got out. I went in and got my bucket of balls, went over. By then a place had opened up, stepped up, and just stayed there and hit my whole bucket.
Good.
And I was so happy that I didn't just go home, because how would I have felt about myself the whole day? Like, oh, I really let myself down, huh? You're
Yeah.
not any different than you were. But when you then jump back into who you are, and it didn't matter whether I hit good balls or not, I was there and I
Yeah.
was being myself, and it didn't matter who else around me. And for the first time in my life, I hit one 200-yard ball. I'd never done that
Nice.
before. And this gentleman, who's about 10 years older than me, I think, was next to me. And he turned over to me and he said, that was a good shot. And I was like, "Oh, well, thank you." And he goes, "Because I saw you, hitting balls." And I thought, "Oh, she must be just learning." And he said, "But what I realized is that you were just warming up. And now you just look at that. You hit that 200-yard ball." And I thought, maybe that's how life is. I'm just warming up.
I
And
love that.
now, bang, I'm hitting those 200-yard balls. Not all the time. Sometimes I hit a 100-yard ball. Sometimes I hit a 150. And
Sometimes it
sometimes,
goes the wrong direction.
sometimes I surprise the heck out of myself. I'm like, oh yeah, that's muscle memory. I got it. I know just how that feels. And you were talking about, how something feels when it's right.
Yeah.
It felt, when I came down with that ball and my arms and my movement, I just knew, oh, this is a good ball.
Yeah.
And what if I hadn't have ever gone? What if I just went home? I would have
Isn't it
missed the
funny that I
opportunity.
think all the fears and the things around surrounding why we don't do things or we don't act in a certain way or it all comes down to like if you really boil it down, it all comes down to the fear of what other people think of us. And there's
Right?
so much stuff that we base around like what other people think of us and who cares?
Who cares, right? It is a
Yeah.
crazy thing because if I had been totally all by myself on that driving range, I wouldn't have cared. I would have immediately parked my car. But I was
Yep.
worried about being accepted, being embarrassed, being not enough. That not enough thing again.
Yeah.
But those
Always
lessons
comes back.
are right in front of us all the time, every day, if we take them in as true lessons. I love that. Um, so I'm not a cookie cutter, and neither are you.
I should say not.
No one's rubber stamping us like, oh
No.
yeah, everyone be just like this, or you be just like this person. We are our own selves. Tell me about your authentic self and the things that you love the most about your authenticity.
So I absolutely love that I am super creative and obviously like my hair, my like that's an expression of my creativity and it allows me to show that every day. And it allows me to push boundaries for people because I think when some of us are willing to step up and be authentic, it almost gives people this idea, this glimmer of hope of if we could do it, they probably could too. And I absolutely love being able to do that. I also love being a light to other people and helping them figure out their own path. I don't love the term healer, but I look at myself as more of a guide and just being able to shine a light to let other people see the beauty that they have in themselves and to be able to discover their own divinity. And it's probably the thing that brings me the most joy of anything in the world is just being able to help other people figure out how amazing they are.
You know, that is truly one of your great gifts to the world. Every time I see you or I see one of your posts, I think, ah, that's a light. It's okay for me to be different. It's okay for me to fly. It's okay for me to be weird. Like, for example, with my hair. We both are doing this with our hair. So, when my arthritis medicine created this crazy hair on my head, it got super thin. Um, I couldn't style it anymore. I always wore this spiky hair and cute with a little white stripe and. And I thought, well, I don't want to just walk around like this with a hat on or cap on my whole life. So I have a couple choices. I can just let it be completely weird or shave my head, or I can start wearing wigs. I thought, well, no, maybe in the future I might do that other things, but for right now, I'm going to start wearing wigs.
I love it.
And so when I started doing this, I mean, I have 15 in every different length, in every different color, in all these different styles. And I think a lot of people said to me, Mary, why don't you just get one wig and just stick with it? And then people will think it's your real hair. But when you change all the time, people know you're wearing wigs. I'm like, I don't care.
You get to have fun
I'm
with it.
I'm not trying to hide that I'm wearing a wig. I'm just trying, and so it's like every day when I get up, I'm like, what am I going to do today? What am I going to wear? What do I feel like today? Do I feel adventuresome? Do I need a short thing? Do I feel blonde? Do I feel whatever? And some people have said to John, "How is that you when Mary shows up, she's a different person every day?" And he goes like, "I love it."
Right? I get a new one
I
every.
I never know who's coming.
Yep.
Whether it's
I love
Raquel
that.
Welch or whether it's, um, uh, someone like, the Queen, very elegant, or if it's just like someone who's just going to go camping.
Yep.
And it's being ourselves. And I think by doing this, maybe I give others a little bit of permission just to mix it up, not to be a
Absolutely.
rubber stamp.
Yep. There's nothing that says we can't other than our own voice and conditioning of what we think is okay and what we're supposed to do. So I run around with unicorn masks in my trunk that I'll
Tell
pull
me
out at
about
any
that.
given. I just have two of them in my trunk. I just love to run around and I'll just pull them out at stupid times when I'm putting gas in my car or just to remind people it's okay to not fit the mold and it's okay to have fun, like we don't have to take nothing has to be serious about being adult besides the fact that we think it does.
I love that. I love that. Sometimes I do think that about, because I'm older, 69. I think by being active, energetic, out there, still creating myself, I give other women the permission that life isn't over. It's never too late and nothing is impossible. And that you can be out there being your best self. Do you ever follow, you should, I follow her on both Facebook and Instagram, Train with Joan.
I don't.
Okay.
I'll have to look it up.
Okay. So she started her journey at 76. And
Wow.
she has before and after. She wasn't like, crazy out of shape, but she was chunky and just no muscle tone and weak. And now she's 87.
That's
And
amazing.
I'm telling you what, she has back muscles like I wish I had. I mean, she can do a deadlift like nobody's business, and you can just they film her from behind. Now she's her skin's a little saggy, but she doesn't mind that you see that because for crying out loud, she's 87.
It's 87. Yeah.
But you can see these chunk of muscles in her hind end that are just like clamping down. She's so fun to follow and to just like she inspires me every single day
I
to
love that.
to be all that I can be, just like you do.
I love that. Thank you.
You inspire me with bravery and courage, authenticity and wisdom.
Thank you.
As we close today, Chantel, what's the one thing that you want to make sure that people understand about themselves, you, life? What would you share?
I think I would share that the magic of life comes in finding that unconditional love for yourself. And not just like the internal, but where we actually externally show it and start to step into that and allow other people to see that. And it's just such a beautiful place to be. So I think that's the magic I just want to share with everyone is who you are is exactly who you're supposed to be. And just love that person.
And where you are is
Yeah.
exactly where you're supposed to be because that's where the most lessons are. That's where the most growth is.
Yeah.
And so just to know that you are exactly where you're supposed to be, being the exact person you're supposed to be at this time. I love it. Thank you, Chantel. Thanks for
Yes,
coming
you're
on
welcome.
and taking time for us and sharing your wisdom and your authenticity. And, I'm going to let you use the official title of badass,
Thank you.
because it's not, as you and I both know, it's not enough just to be a badass. You have to have a purpose
Totally.
and you have to have grace and you have grit. And all those things belong to you and to all of us who are on the path of authentic self. Thank you. Namaste.
Listen to the full podcast today and subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more. Crafting a meaningful life with Mary Crafts.